Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. This is a special Good Friday afternoon edition. And to David Krayden hosting this show, coming at you live from our nation's capital. And when we come back, Spencer from Make Canada Great Again will be joining me. We'll talk about his latest exploits and a little bit about last night's debate, because I think this is a crucial moment in this campaign.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please subscribe if you can and like the station, because it helps us beat the YouTube suppression. Now, without further ado, welcome Spencer back to Stand on Guard. I knew I forgot something and I'm sending you the link. Oh, I've been a little overworked lately, but anyway. I'm glad we got you back on the show here. Now, before we get into a little bit of I want to hear your commentary on the election or the debate last night. I did a show on it this morning with Kyle Kemper, and he had some fascinating insights, and I'm sure you will too. But before we get into all of that, so tell me what you've been up to lately. You tell me that Elections Canada is looking for you now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been I've been attacked. I've been mobbed. I have not been in such a situation that caused me to be so stressed out as I have been today and during the entire making of these videos for this channel. But yeah, I was just finishing up my Elections Canada video. I'm doing an expose on how easy it is to vote with a fake name, fake address. And as I mentioned in the last broadcast, with Pill Bottle, which was the cause of my terrors today, let's say. But that video will be out shortly. I got lots of editing to do. I was going to put it out tonight, but after today, I can't. It's going to take me some time. Let's just say they literally have my face up in all of the Elections Canada offices, and they were trying to get me to, thankfully I was able to maneuver around it, but they were trying to get me to back myself into a corner where I was signing something that would put me in a position where they could imprison me for 5 years. So that was a whole thing. But that aside, it's been a pretty busy week in my neck of the woods. Sunday, and after we had spoken to each other, I got an email at 5:30 p.m. saying that Jagmeet Singh was going to be in Toronto. So I put my wig on. I had a construction hat. And it's quite a funny video. I was able to infiltrate his get-together, to say lightly. A quick note on that. The bathroom lines at a restaurant have more people in them than a Jagmeet Singh event. There was literally like 20 people in his event. Imagine the leader of a party going somewhere and only being able to attract literally less than 36 people.
Wow.
Yeah, I also infiltrated quickly the guy who replaced Paul Chang's office. And they They anointed me an official volunteer of the Liberal Party.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love the fact that Jagmeet Singh had plenty of people there. If you were watching the debate last night, I was wishing that a large cane would appear and yank him off the stage. I've never seen such an undignified presentation. He was constantly heckling, and I thought, is this guy should he even be here? In fact, I would have liked to have just seen two of them on the stage, Paulie and Carney. I don't know what the separatist was doing up there, because he has no ambition to be the Prime Minister of Canada. So why is he there? I ask this every election year. Nobody can ever give me a good answer, because if you're a separatist party and you have no interest in becoming Prime Minister, why are you engaged in a national election debate? If all you're interested in is representing Quebec, and if people say, "Oh, Yves Francois Blanchet is a good debater and he always adds something to it," well, that's probably true, but I still say he shouldn't be there. And it's, I think it detracts from it. But Jagmeet Singh detracted from the whole evening for me, because he was just so damn rude, constantly interrupting, Polyev, he was definitely sending signals, I think, to Carney that, hey, we can work together. I don't think Jagmeet's going to even win his seat in Vancouver, though. And so he's dreaming and big dreams here that I don't think are ever going to transpire for him. I think it's over for Jagmeet Singh. I think he's virtually killed his party. And if you talk behind the scenes to a lot of NDP people, they are privately saying the same thing. Even NDP caucus people really resent the fact they think Jagmeet destroyed their party. And just, but did you get that feeling too last night that Jagmeet was sending, sort of messages to Carney that we can work together? I'm prepared to prop you up just like I did Justin Trudeau.
I mean, absolutely. It was like a weird love fest. Maybe it was happening in the French debate, and we couldn't get that with the translation. But it seemed as if they talked to each other beforehand. And you said something funny there that, he kind of said himself accidentally, like that he's fallen apart, the party's fallen. He said something, when they asked his biggest regret, it made me laugh out loud. He said, I didn't get to meet enough people. Because enough people wanted to meet Jagmeet. No, but he completely embarrassed himself. The party is, and anybody with a brain who's vaguely aware and familiar with Canadian politics knows that he held the country hostage for his $2 million pension, which is what I call him out for on Sunday. And if you've seen the video, which you think you have, and anyone who hasn't, watch his reaction from the CPAC side of things, and then watch my first person video of it. He kind of like crumbled. He kept calling me brother. His face got all weird, and he's ruined a party for selfish interests. And I can't believe he's still running, and I can't believe the party allows him to still run. But I mean, that's a whole other story.
Well, I'm sure. I put myself back here. I'm sure you've seen this clip here, but it's worth showing again because this is just a moment of complete hypocrisy for Jagmeet Singh. And this is a Black journalist with Rebel News, and being from Rebel News makes her just impossible to talk to for Jagmeet Singh. And just imagine while you're watching this, if this was a CBC reporter, or I don't know, one of the more, well, CBC is left, one of the even more left-wing outlets in Canada, and this was a Black woman. And Pierre Polyev said, I'm sorry, I cannot answer your question because you're from an outlet I don't recognize, and you spread misinformation and disinformation. But just watch Jagmeet in action.
With Rebel News. Your party takes great pride in standing against hate such as white supremacy, Islamophobia, and online.
Sorry, I didn't get your outlet.
Drea Humphrey with Rebel News.
Okay.
Your party.
You know where I'm going to go with this, all right?
Can I speak?
Yeah, you can. I'm just going to say you know where I'm going to go with it, though.
That over 200 churches have been targeted by arson and vandalism since claims of remains being discovered at former residential schools swept the nation in 2021. These claims have been disproven by bands that excavated and remain unproven by those that have not.
Again, thank you, but I'm not going to respond to an organization that promotes misinformation and disinformation like Rebel News, so no, I'm not going to respond to your question.
But don't you think if he had half a brain, he would say, well, if I respond to your question, I'm rectifying misinformation and disinformation because I'm giving you the right information. But Jagmeet doesn't think that way. He doesn't think at all. This is a guy who just has nothing but contempt for people he disagrees with. And it amazes me if I think you mentioned you had a construction hat on at his event. I don't know if he actually ever meets with real Canadians, blue collar workers, average people who have hard jobs, because he's never had a hard job in his life. He's been a privileged, pampered lawyer who went into the House of Commons apparently just to get a pension. He's independently wealthy already. He has nothing in common with the people he say he's supposed to be attracting. But isn't that a real telling moment? He hasn't got the time of day for this woman, and I'm not even going to talk to you.
I mean, that's Drea Humphrey, who's an amazing journalist with an amazing outlet, Rebel News. And she's put herself on the line for years talking about the lack there of bodies being found in all of these excavation sites. Not that the 60s scoop didn't happen, but the reason being they've been mainly giving the Canadians for, intruding in our lives with all of this, this pandering to a group of people who, again, understandable, have issues, but we didn't do it. I wasn't involved in residential school. That stuff bothers me so much. It's so ridiculous. The land acknowledgements are so ridiculous. But to your point about the way that Jagmeet Singh had handled that, I mean, I expect nothing less from Jagmeet Singh. He can't answer a hard question because he has no substance, because he's a fraud. And so, what's really telling actually is that as terrible as Mark Carney is, he gave them the time of day because he's got enough, not much, but enough intelligence to realize that, this outlet that has millions of viewers and has a large position in the Canadian media landscape and who are trusted by millions of Canadians might have something that you might want to hear them say, or at the very least, as you had said, if they're spreading misinformation, maybe give them the right information. But again, Jagmeet Singh doesn't have any information to give to anybody. And he's definitely not meeting with blue collar workers. If you were to see the crowd at any of his places, when they zoom out, they're just cross-eyed weirdos who probably don't even know what they're doing or how they got into the building in the first place.
That was the other side of the story for both of these debates, was the fact that independent new media were allowed to ask a few questions, but the response, the hostility from the CBC, especially from the French language community, these far-right people were allowed to ask questions, and it was unacceptable. But really what bothers me the most about the response was only CBC and other mainstream media outlets have the right to define the questions. They debate questions. And of course, that's why every year we hear the same question about, do you think Canadians are still concerned about climate change? And of course, they all said, yes, they are. And of course, the truth is, no, they're not. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about going broke. They're worried about whether or not there's going to be a nuclear war because of irresponsible foreign policy. But they're not worried about climate change. I don't know anybody who goes to bed at night obsessing about the climate change. Maybe Jagmeet goes to bed thinking about that. But I just want to play a bit more of these incredible journalists. And I must say, I've worked with the National Press Corps, and I used to be a member of the National Press Corps. The last time I applied, I was denied because I was told my outlet wasn't real. So despite years of being a member of the National Press Gallery, despite working on Parliament Hill, being a public affairs officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, I was flatly rejected because my outlet wasn't acceptable to them. But here's the acceptable journalist talking about blacklisting everybody else.
Truck going around with a video wall, promoting conspiracy theories and allegations, mostly against Mark Carney. Let's face it, like we're showing it there, you can see this on the screen.
So it's a conspiracy theory to suggest Mark Carney has supported net zero policies now. This is beyond reason. But I can't believe Cue Ball Cochran has got the gall to go on like this. It's just incredible.
That is one of the few things we can show on TV that appears on the side of that.
Can't show the rep.
The same sort of thing happened with people stacking the microphones and the questions is going in a totally different direction.
Well, there's only so much we can do to control free speech,
I understand that.
Understand that?
But, lifeguards got to look after the pool, right?
Oh, he's the lifeguard. I see. He's looking after
And this is where we've ended up in this election. With everything going on with Donald Trump and everything going on in this economy and everything going on in the world, this is where the national Canadian election debate has ended up. And it's just exhausting. And it is the end product of multiple years of rage farming for narrow political gain and financial benefit for a very small group of people who blew this up today.
Amen.
It's incredible. Where's the rage coming from?
Admitting the rebel news, et cetera, into this thing. I think we've now seen the last nail in the coffin of any idea that these people are just sort of alternative media or independent journalists or anything resembling. These were bully boys and thugs. These are performance artists. These are grifters.
Bob, I'm going to come to you on this. Here's what's going on here. To my left, there's the room there where the media is gathered. It's where they can watch the debates. This is where the scrums are happening with the leaders. There was some sort of an altercation inside there in the last little while involving Ezra Levant, who is the head of Rebel News, and other journalists. Michel Cormier has escorted Ezra Levant out. His credentials, we believe, has been revoked. Earlier in this program, you might have seen sort of some glitchy video playing because we had to go to tape because Mr. Levant and his people came over with cameras rolling and tried to interrupt this broadcast.
That is a complete and utter fabrication. Ezra Levant was not removed anywhere. There was no altercation. And it strikes me as not just passing odd, but incredible hypocrisy that the CBC would be the ones passing on the misinformation last night. There was no altercation. Ezra Levant earned the right. He was awarded the right to be there because he sued these people, saying you can't keep us out. And thank God he won. But it just strikes me as, once again, the CBC are the ones defining who's right and who's wrong in all this. And I can just taste the possibility, the potential of seeing these people defunded if Pierre Paulie becomes prime minister. And he was asked about it last night. And I said this week, that's the one thing he's been consistent about now for 3 years. That's almost a litmus test for me. If he ever stops talking about defunding the CBC, then I'm really going elsewhere. But he at least continues to talk about defunding the CBC. And when you watch people like that, you think, can't happen soon enough.
No, I mean, their reaction tells you all you need to know. They are terrified that the people will get their will here in Canada. They were terrified that that will is having them defunded because they can't survive without government funding. I rewatched one of the committees that Catherine, whatever her name is, the CEO of CBC was at. And one of the MPs made a note to let her know that the cumulative watch time monthly for everyone on average of their viewers is 37 minutes. They get 37 minutes accumulative watch time. If you were doing that on YouTube, you couldn't sustain paying for premium, let alone sustain an organization. But again, it goes to they're in the death throes of the end of an era, and an unfortunate end, because 40 years ago the CBC had some good content, but it has become an absolute left-wing extremist rag that only exists to brainwash the remaining Canadians who intake it. And there was an altercation. I forget the guy's name, but one of the CBC guys assaulted David Menzies twice when they were leaving.
Yes, right.
They were leaving, right? And so, I've had the same interaction. This is all they can do. Because their ideas are so frail and vacuous, they can't defend them with speech. And so the only way they can attempt to defend them in the moment is to be violent. And that guy said everything you needed to hear as well about free speech. And then he responds with, be the lifeguard of the pool. Anyone bringing up the idea of changing our laws for free speech is a terrible human being, and you should never listen to them. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, you're dead right there. And you're right about Dave Menzies. He's now become the punching bag, not just for the police and the security around cabinet ministers, but now he's a punching bag for the mainstream media. So, I've known Dave for years. We worked at Sun News together, that short-lived venture, television Sun News, and Dave was on in the morning with a very, very comedic show, and he has endured so much as a journalist. But what kills me the most is that the CBC won't even call him a journalist. They will call him a personality. Even though he's out there covering council meetings, he's out there at school board meetings getting ejected, getting thrown out of meetings because he's daring to ask questions, but he's not a journalist. He's a personality. Cubal Cochran, that's a journalist, even though he's the lifeguard at the pool. And I want to show this clip here, and because, as you know, I'm not sycophantic about Pierre Polyev. I do think he's going to have a slim majority, but there are times he really frustrates the hell out of me. And he did this last night. And it's while I was doing a live broadcast of it, I got like 30, 40 comments within 15 seconds from people saying, no, there he goes. And I could just hear a collective groan go up from all these conservatives who are saying, get real on Ukraine. And here he is promising to stand with Ukraine until the end of time again.
Surely constitutes a crisis, leading in a time of crisis. Mr. Polyev, question for you. If the United States withholds support from Ukraine going forward, do you believe Canada should commit more to assist?
I believe we should continue to support Ukraine. Our party supported donating missiles that the Canadian military was decommissioning. We supported funds and other armaments to back the Ukrainians in the defense of their sovereignty. We also need to rebuild our own Canadian.
Now, he gets off that topic as quickly as he can because he knows people are throwing darts at him for saying that. So he gets into the Canadian military thing. But how absurd is that? Oh, we're going to give all our armaments to Ukraine, then we're going to rebuild the Canadian military. I mean, it's delusional. And we can do this without the U.S. too. We can do it alone. We can go it alone, and we're going to fight Russia alone. Yeah. We can't fight anybody, and neither can the UK. Their military is almost as bad as ours, and people still think it's the Royal Navy, and it's the British Army, and it's the Royal Air Force. It's basically denuded to nothing. They couldn't even fathom taking on Russia. It's the same with France. It would be like Napoleon going in 1812. It would be the same thing. These people are not capable of taking on Russia and doing this without the United States. But Polyev is falling into this trap, and he said it again. And it wasn't enough for the moderator. That killed me. After he said, yeah, we got to do more for Ukraine. The moderator came back and said, I don't think you put enough flesh on those bones. Can you say it again? And so Polyev said it again. Yeah, we're going to be with Ukraine to the end. And I don't even want to play it because it just drives me crazy. But
yeah,
there is a sense of delusion amongst Canadian politicians. And this is why I would have loved to have seen Maxime Bernier there last night, because he would have been the only person with a sane position on Ukraine, which is the war has to end. And the more weapons we give to Ukraine, the longer the war will last, the more Ukrainians are going to die. And that's the stark terms of this war. We are helping Ukrainians to die by sending more weapons. We are keeping a dictator named Zelensky in power, and we are sending billions of dollars into a black hole of Kiev, and we're never going to see this money again. And it's being stolen by corrupt politicians. That's the truth of Ukraine. But Pierre Polyev will never tell you that. And I just think it's a shame, a damn shame, that he can't have a moment of honesty about this, because it's just like what you were talking about last week with, telling people to take off their Make Canada Great Again hats at rallies. It really gets people upset. And when he hammers down on Ukraine, send them more billions, I think he's in danger of not necessarily losing the election, but he's in danger of losing people who won't go out and vote because they just really get ticked off when they hear that. What do you think?
I mean, I know I've received personal messages from a couple people saying that between his terrible performance in the French debate, and maybe that was okay because the translations were off. There were some translations that were late that I missed that were the wrong words. So who knows what they were doing to him there. But between that and the Ukraine thing, they're voting PPC. So there's some really hardline conservatives who don't want to hear any of it. They're tired of it. I'm still voting for Pierre because there's really no other option. It really does seem like a battle of good and evil at this point. But the whole Ukraine thing is so asinine to me. No nation has been successful in beating Russia in a war, I don't think, since the Mongols, and they didn't do a good job of it. Napoleon, the greatest general in history, couldn't do it. And they all do the same tired thing. They all are far too confident, underprepared. They get beat by the most powerful general in human history, perhaps definitely above Napoleon, which is the Russian winter. The Russian winter consumes all, and the Russians will throw their people, as they have through history, until you have none left. They literally, in World War II, told the people in the major cities that they're not evacuating the women and children because the men will fight harder. They burned the cities down before they got there. When Napoleon arrived in Moscow, I believe it was, they already burned it all. They already ransacked it. They don't care. They're literally in it to win it. There's nothing else. But historical perspective aside, and we look at where we are today, for Canada, who has sleeping bags that are older than me as functioning pieces of military equipment, the most spending we've done in our military lately is putting tampons in men's bathrooms, which is not a joke. That is actually accurate, which is incredible in and of itself. We have veterans who are on the streets here in Canada who can't feed themselves. We have no business getting involved in other nations' wars until, at the very least, we can fix that. For people to be pro-Ukraine and anti-Canada, because that's what you end up being. When your country is in distress, when like 2 million people are going to food banks monthly, when the majority of people in Canada are $100, if not less, from insolvency, when we have a $60 billion deficit and we're being robbed blind by our elected officials, we have Chinese interference and Indian interference, we have spies throughout our country. When all of that is in the backdrop, how your concern is anywhere else but home is incredible to me. So it shows that you're either uninformed or you're malevolent. And sorry, yeah. And if you're one of those two, you're likely both, actually, in this present time. And there should be, again, as I said, not a red penny should be leaving our shores until our house is fixed. And I'm not talking about the House of Commons, albeit that too. I'm talking about the proverbial House of Canada is in absolute disrepair, and it is just mind-boggling to me that anyone can have any other position other than that unless you're evil or an idiot. And in fact, it's likely both.
Yeah, it's likely both, but we have not got a functioning operational Leopard tank left in the Canadian Army. We've given everyone that worked to Ukraine, and they've all been blown up on the battlefield, every last one. You never hear that from anybody in the government, tell you, whatever happened to those Leopard tanks? Well, they're gone now, destroyed, blown up by Russian artillery. They're gone, and they're not coming back. And General Andrew Leslie, who at one point I really didn't like, but I have come to really respect this man because he has really spoken out against the Liberal government in the last 10 years. And of course, he's the grandson of two defense ministers. And he has said that there's no mechanism available to replace any of this armament that we've given away, that it's not going to come back anytime soon. So when I hear Pierre Paulie say we're going to rebuild Canada's military in the same breath that he says we're going to keep giving it all away to Ukraine, I mean, this is schizophrenia. This is absolute nonsense. And we have somehow got to return to sanity on this. And people always forget, well, if we went to war with Russia, they would conventionally destroy us because we don't have the armament. But what happens if it escalates to a nuclear war? And it could happen so quickly. This is what is so dangerous about alliance systems. Anyone who studies history knows alliance systems get you into a war very quickly, and it's almost automatic. And so happened in the First World War. People just watched it. They sleptwalked into it, and they just said, there's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do because we're in this alliance system, and we have to fight. We have to go into this war. But don't worry, it's going to be over in 3 months. And my God, we have to have some sanity. And I don't know if Paulie is doing this simply because he doesn't want the pushback from the CBC and the Liberals, and he doesn't want to be the only one out there besides Maxime Bernier who's arguing to stop the war. I don't know, because I can't really believe he's this enthusiastic about getting Canada into a third world.
I mean, I agree completely. It's a common repeated trope, but those who don't learn from history are bound to repeat it. And that is, I mean, we are so closely aligned to the timeline of World War I with what's happening. It is so similar that it's actually frightening. And we will end up in trenches again because that's what they're fighting like. And I sure as hell ain't going. I'm not going to go die for any leader in this country after a decade of what's happened. Not at all. I don't have that kind of patriotism. It doesn't exist. And I don't think anybody else does, frankly. And you can see that from our enlistment numbers in Canada. And I don't.
Well, not after they've denigrated Canadian history, Canadian culture for the last 20 years. Why do they expect Canadians, especially younger Canadians, and that's who would fight the war, obviously? Why do they expect them to come out and fight? If they have denigrated and assaulted Canadian history and Canadian culture, Canadian heritage as being not worthwhile, being racist, misogynistic, and just horrible, why would anybody want to fight for that? But they don't think past that equation. They just don't.
They seriously don't. And I don't know how they can't, because that's literally what you need. Even if you don't have any weapons, which we don't, you need the people. So what are you going to do? You're going to draft us? Good luck with that. Seriously, good luck with that. The only way they're going to be able to manage that is the way the Ukraine is, by kidnapping you as you walk in the street. And that's where we're heading. Is that where we're heading? Exactly. Is that what you want? Because it sure as hell ain't what I want. That's not the country I grew up in. Even if you've erased my national identity, what's still hanging left by the threads is not that. That is the antithesis to the Canada that I know and love. And so I don't know. It's ridiculous. We are literally slow walking out. Well, we are in World War III. I mean, it is. There's nations are at war. I don't care if it's a proxy war. It's now between Russia and the United States. That's a world war. And, you know, it's scary to think what could happen. I hope cooler heads prevail. And, you know, these negotiations that Trump was supposed to have, they were supposed to be already done. But you have an unwilling partner in Zelensky who reminds me a lot of Jagmeet Singh in the way that he does. Well, he doesn't listen to his people, and he does things that are blatantly and in your face for self-interest. So, I mean, I hate getting involved in geopolitics because of how much we have to do here in Canada. But unfortunately, that piece of geopolitics is bled into our, I mean, it made it into the debate. We should, and they talked about Palestine. Go away. I don't care. I don't care at all. There are hundreds of wars being fought that people don't know the names of. There are civil wars that have been happening for decades in Africa. We don't throw up ourselves in arms for that. We don't jump into hysteria over that. You don't hear about that. You don't have people protesting because of that. You ask yourself why that's the case, right? Why do they why do they do this? In my opinion, all of the identity politics and all this insane, illogical involvement in other countries' conflicts is purely a distraction to keep people sedated and unaware of what truly is happening in Canada, which is mass fraud on a scale of over $100 billion to probably to the tune of close to $500 billion over the last decade, if not more. More money was printed, more money was printed, but our debt grew during the last 10 years with Trudeau greater than all of the other governments combined prior to Trudeau. So it's that alone should have people upset. But again, it comes back to the point with prorogation that I made. That didn't cause people to get mad and get in the streets. I don't know what will. And people are talking a lot of this whole, I'm going to rise up if Mark Carney wins. I don't believe you. I'll be there if you do. And I sure as hell will. But I don't believe you. But not to trip off. The Ukraine thing is an absolute joke. We have no business being involved in it. They should just come and negotiate. And Russia wants to negotiate, and they've said they've wanted to negotiate for years. The UK and the United States have specifically stopped those negotiations because war is a racket. That's all it is. It's just stream.
It is. And unfortunately, a lot of people have to die as a result of that racket. So a lot of people, well, a small portion can get rich off the war, while everybody else has to suffer as a result. So I've come full circle. I used to support every foreign war the U.S. was ever involved in, probably because I wore the uniform and I served with NATO. But I've come full circle. I've realized that it was Eisenhower who talked about the military-industrial complex back in 1960. He knew what he was talking about. He was a five-star general as well as a two-term president. He knew what was going on behind the scenes. And that's unfortunately what's going on here and with all of these foreign wars. People are getting wealthy off the death and misery of other people, including the ones fighting the war, and including the civilians who are dying en masse. And it's a tragedy. Wanted to show this clip because Paulie did have some good moments last night. It wasn't all about Ukraine.
No.
And I think this was one of his better moments.
Everyone on the stage, Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Singh, myself, we have our top secret security clearance. I got mine within 3 weeks. It wasn't hard, but I felt it was important that I had it so I could be in a position to be informed about that dangerous world and take decisions that. And Mr. Poilievre, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance, and you've refused. Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government. And I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well,
that was one of his better moments.
Oh my God!
And he had Carney on the ropes. What I found fascinating is when Carney was asked what the major security risk for Canada was, he said China. This is a guy who's working for China. This is a guy who's in the pocket of China. As Paulie mentions, he went to Beijing to get a $276 million loan for his company, not for Canada, for his company. He's been arguing for years that the Chinese yuan should replace the US dollar, that China should be the chief economic engine of the world. He loves China. He praises China for its environmental policies, which are horrible. But it's like he thinks, does anybody not listen or something? Does he really think nobody's paying attention? Obviously, because, and if you look at this guy, talk about shifty-eyed. He's up there. Something. He won't look at Paulie. He won't even look at the audience. He's looking in space. It's almost like he's thinking, I don't want to be here at all. And I know it's been planned that I'm going to be prime minister, but I don't know how I got here. And it's really embarrassing to watch this guy when he's confronted with facts. He implodes. He doesn't know what to do. And of course, the reference to Paul Chiang, he was defending him until the 11th hour, and Chiang had to get out. And I think as we were talking about that, and I asked you, why do you think Paul Chiang got out? Because China told him to. Probably. That's exactly why he withdrew from the race, because they were getting too close. So I think that was one of his better moments. Viva Fry, who's been on my show several times, and I've been on his. He tends to be a PPC supporter because I believe he ran in the last election as a PPC candidate in Montreal. But he thought that, and another instance with Polyev sort of telling the camera or saying, before I answer that question, let me just tell you this. And Viva Frei was convinced that Polyev won the debate at that point and won the election. And I really can't disagree, because when I looked this over again this morning, I can't believe how shifty-eyed and how guilty Mark Carney appears. And virtually every time he's asked a question, he just does not look comfortable in the role of PM. Now, I thought Polyev should have gotten a lot tougher with him. I thought he should have said, "You're not a businessman. You're an international grifter." I think he should have reused that against him. I think he should have tried to get Carney mad, because it doesn't take much. He's always on the verge of a temper tantrum. But I do think he won the debate, and I do think this is probably going to put him over the top on April 28th. What say you?
I agree fully. I couldn't even believe that was Carney's question. I'm like, no way you're asking this. As I'm watching it live. And then he asked the question, and then there was that, I was on bated breath for a moment. I'm like, oh, Pierre, don't mess this up. And he hit it out of the park. I mean, it couldn't have been better. I was laughing watching that again. It was so beautiful. What a way to end the debate, that you got rocked in the whole time. If anyone just tuned into the end, they got to see you lose. And that's like their number one issue they're running on. That's not Trump, is that he doesn't have a security clearance. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Why would you get your security clearance when at least 11, if not more than 11 MPs in Parliament are implicated in being traitors to this country? And you know, it's funny about Paul Chang. They replaced him rather with Peter Yuen, whose office I infiltrated again. Same office, same staff. But he, in 2019, he's caught paying international students to go vote for the Liberals. He was an honorary member in Beijing at a military parade, dressed up. He is on he may not be now because of the conflict, but was on a board of commerce that was directly related to the CCP. Like, he's a compromised asset too. And funny enough, a Toronto Police Service retired from the Toronto Police Service, just like Paul Chang. So tells you what's going on up in Toronto. They're captured too. But to go back to the debate and Carney, and he did call China, which was very strange. I don't know what that was. Maybe that was a moment of clarity for him, or what. Maybe the earpiece that was going in his ear, coming directly from Beijing, said, "Don't say China," but he missed the "don't," and they said, "Say China." Right? But who knows? But I mean, he got crushed in that debate, and I don't particularly like the idea of having a separatist party involved. I mean, if they got someone that's literally on the stage saying he doesn't want to be the prime minister, put Bernier up, for God's sake. But with that being said, he was there to just rock Carney after he got rocked by Polyev. I mean, it was just one after the other. And Polyev, beyond that Ukraine thing, which made me verbally exclaim my frustration when I was watching it. Other than that, I think he did a great job. And one last thing on it, which I find very strange, is that on Paulie market, right, the international betting, whatever, Pierre went up in favor by 5 points after that debate. I finally got a sponsor from one of these places, Betway. They shut their odds down last night after the debate. Going into the debate, he was a 2.62, and then they shut the odds down. And I'm like, okay, they're shutting the odds down because they're going to refangle it in Poilievre's favor. I wake up this morning, he goes from a 2.62 to a 3.5. Like, what the hell? So he's based on that, he's gotten worse in what the public thinks is going to be for the odds. So I find that runs contrary to what I watched with my own eyes. And what I also have, one last thing on the odds, because it is very interesting and telling, because it's an Ontario money from pockets of Canadians only. After the first debate, the French debate, he was a 2.62 ahead of it. He was a 2.62 after it, after they refangled it, which I thought he ate it in the French debate. If that was the only debate we had, it was a Liberal government. But I thought he destroyed Carney yesterday, and it was an amazing showing, and more people watched it. Millions of people saw that. And then the odds go worse in his favor and better in Carney's. So that really does confuse me personally. But I'm still safe in my assumption that, and not assumption, it's the reality. It was the same for Trump. Trump was an underdog going into the election, even a week out, and on the Las Vegas odds. And I think that's a better representation of what's happening than the polls. But he still won. So I'm still praying to God that Pierre can pull this off, and I think he will. I can't imagine the majority of Canadians are voting for the Liberal Party of Canada.
Yeah, I believe that too. I think it's going to be a slim majority. I'm prepared to go that far. And I'm interested to see where the polls are going to be on Monday or Tuesday. Probably we'll see something Tuesday. There won't be much over Easter weekend. It'll take a while for this to percolate, I think, and we'll see something Tuesday. But I do think we're going to see, even though I think the polls are skewed, oversampling of the over 60 crowd, I think we're going to see Paulie leading next week as we go into the final days of this. And I wanted to ask you, are you doing a second installment of your documentary with Lisa Robinson?
Yes, we have so much that was left out because I got so much information, and she's gone through so much and been the butt of. It's funny, they call her a conspiracy theorist. They're the ones literally spinning conspiracies all the time. So we do have a fair amount of that to do. And I would like to say one thing about that, which is insane. If anyone, I don't have Facebook because I don't trust it, and it's also just a terrible website. But if you're on Facebook, go to the Pickering community group, whatever. It's the first one that'll come up that Lisa and all the counselors are in. He daily goes on there and harasses her and bullies her, which is a wild thing for a mayor to be spending his time doing. But he was calling. He said the documentary was misinformation and was poorly made. And maybe just putting it together on StreamYard is, it's not like it's just me with my cell phone, but the information wasn't poorly collected. And it's just funny to me that he's willing to go out there and say that. And also, one last thing about his Facebook antics, which are daily, and you can go watch a man fall apart on the internet. When they finally introduced the Canadian anthem, he comments on her posts about it, saying that she opposed it. That's how crazy this guy. He opposed it, and then he comments that he's opposed. So who's spreading misinformation? Who's spreading conspiracy theories? But I digress. I'll be seeing her actually on the 26th. She's having an event at a golf course in Pickering. For people that want to go meet her, Lisa Robinson will be doing her campaigning for the PPC. Beyond Maxime Bernier, it's the only PPC candidate that I support. And I think she's actually the only one that has a snowball's chance in hell in winning if she really gets out there and gets herself exposed, because she is the only politician fighting for Canadians.
I endorsed Lisa yesterday on an appearance on Redacted, which I didn't even tell her I was doing that, but I strongly support. I hope people vote for her. I hope she wins this race. I think she's a sterling character, tremendous fighter for free speech. I'm 100% behind her, and I really would like her to win this. I think it would be fantastic. I joked with her the other day. She could be like Deb Gray in the Reform Party days. She could be the only PPC member in the House of Commons, as Deb Gray was for years before there was a huge addition of Reform MPs in God, if I can remember here, 1993, I think. Yeah, 93, when there was a huge influx. But for years, it was just Deb Gray. And I was saying, maybe you're going to be like Deb Gray. You're going to be the only PPC member of Parliament for now, anyway. But yeah, I'm supporting her too. And I think I do think she has a chance of winning this, because nobody has been out there talking to people as much as Lisa has, and I think it's wonderful. So, so go out to her event on the 26th. You know the name of the golf course?
If you give me just a moment, I can tell you exactly. It is. It's not the one that developers own that the mayor hangs out at all the time, but it is right here. She will be at Pickering Glen Golf Course, 230 7th Concession Road, Pickering, Ontario, from 6:30 p.m. till 9 p.m. The suggested donation is anywhere from $0 to $50. You don't got to pay to go meet her, but if you want to support her campaign, she's literally funding it herself. The PPC does not have that capacity to do that. They can print stuff for her, but that's it. So she's funding this campaign herself after not working or not being paid for 9 months. And yeah, I do think she's the only candidate in the PPC that really has the chance, because she's the only one who's every day out there fighting for that community. She's in the faces of the constituents of Pickering. So, I mean, we can only pray for her, but I really hope to God that she wins Pickering, Brooklyn.
Well, yeah, I do too. Spencer, thank you so much. This is the beginning of a beautiful tradition on Friday. I said we could try doing this every Friday. I love doing it. I love talking to you about the week's events. I love the fact that you're out there doing great things, exciting things. You're doing real journalism, and I appreciate the fact that you're on here talking about it. And it was fun talking about the debate because, as you know, I mean, I want to see Mark Carney defeated, and the only way to do that is to elect a conservative government. But I'm not ever going to be so in the bag for any politician that I'm saying, we can't criticize Pierre. We can't criticize Pierre. Because that's not free speech and that's not democracy to me. So thank you for joining me today, Spencer. And we'll see you next week. And God bless and Godspeed, and keep up the good work.
Happy Easter, happy Good Friday to everybody. And it's a privilege and an honor to come on your show. I love talking to you as well. And to everyone out there watching, good night, Patriots and Liberals.
Night for now. We'll see you next week, Spencer. Yes, that was Spencer from Make Canada Great Again. What a website, what a media outlet, what a reporter. And this is a weekly tradition we just started last week, and we're going to be doing this every Friday. It's just talking politics, just conversing. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being a part of this broadcast. It's my second one of the day. I'm exhausted. I need some sleep tonight. I wrote 2 columns today. I'm just tired. Thanks for joining me. I will be back again tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock with all the news you need to know so we can continue to resolve to resist. I'm David Krayden. Godspeed.